you looking for a fun new watercolor painting idea to try? Have you ever tried doing an entire painting with just one color? In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate how to do a single color hand painting using a fun pigment by Daniel Smith called Iridescent Scarab Red, a gorgeous luminescent watercolor that looks almost like an old Renaissance red chalk drawing. Let's jump in and see what this paint can do. My reference photo today is my own photograph. It's my husband's hand holding my little son's hand, and I just thought it lent itself very well to a single color. And so we're just going to do our best to paint values only and using this beautiful complex iridescent color. So this Iridescent Scarab Red, it's kind of a burgundy, but it's got little hints of sparkling blue-green pigment in it. So we'll get to see kind of what happens as we paint that on here. So you can see I've already done my sketch. I just have a couple of jars of water, some paper towel, and some Kolinsky sable brushes. And because my paper surface today is hot pressed, it's a smooth paper, I thought I'd use my softer brushes for that too. All right, I'm going to start with my largest brush. This is a size 8 round brush, and I'm going to start painting in just with water inside of those hands. You know, it's actually not important at this point to stay inside the lines, because right now I'm just going to be doing some very light hints of color, and I'm going to work my way darker as I go. Okay, so I'm going to mix up a very light mixture on my palette here. You can see it's almost this pinkish color when it's mixed with water. And I'm just going to drop that in very lightly into some of the shadow areas and just start to get some color on our paper. For now, I'm just getting kind of a base layer of washed out color on my paper, and we'll slowly build up our values from there. The nice thing about doing a single color painting is that you don't have to worry about mixing colors. All you're thinking about is getting the correct values, the correct shapes, blending. All of that is enough to think about without having to worry about different colors as well. So I'm going to be careful to avoid some of the very brightest highlights in my image where the light is catching on those knuckles and on the top of the little thumb. And then to avoid overworking this, I'll probably need to let that layer dry before coming back with more color. I'll just do a light wash on this side of the hand as well. I really like this color so far. Already it kind of almost looks like an old master's sketch or something like that. If my paper was slightly yellowed, it would look even more vintage. And so far with this light of a wash, I'm not seeing too much of those green hints, but as we start to go darker, I think those will come out a little more. So I'm going to let that dry before moving on. All right, I'm going to stick with my size 8 round brush, and I'm just going to start to build up the values in the shadows. So I'm taking my Iridescent Scarab Red, pretty much straight pigment here. I have to mix in a little water to make it workable, but let's see how dark this can go. I don't think it'll get super dark, but that's okay. We'll say this is a high key painting. And then with a separate brush, I'm going to wet that one and then just gently blend that edge a little bit so we don't end up with a super harsh edge. And there's a couple of deep wrinkles in the hand we want to bring to the darkest possible point here. I think I'm going to switch to a slightly smaller brush and a little more watered down paint now. And I'm going to start to do some of these wrinkles in the hand. This is really where you can make your painting so interesting if you decide to paint all of these little wrinkle details. And so I'm going to start by painting them in, and then I'm going to go, once that's dry, I'll go over in with the wash that will darken up the values where it needs to go darker. You can do a little bit of cross hatching to create some of that skin texture, just with a very light value on the tip of your brush. Try to leave a couple of little highlights where you see texture in the skin catching the light. And so you can see our darkest value is not going to be super dark, but you can see hints of that green that is in the pigment showing up where we paint on very thick. And if I tilt it in the light slightly, you can see the iridescence a little bit too. Skin is a little bit tricky because you want to be subtle with those shifts and changes in value. Especially you'll see when we get to the baby skin, that's going to be extra soft. Remember, the important thing here when you're painting a single color is just to get the values right. So I'm looking at the large shadow shapes like this shape here and this one here, and I'm just trying to get those accurate. And the nature of a wrinkle is you have a deep valley, which is in shadow and will be the darkest value. And then that, as it comes up and starts to curve towards the light, there's a mid-tone, and then the wrinkle will catch a highlight, and that's where your lightest area will be. And so if you want any kind of wrinkle to look 3D, just make it have a dark value, a highlight, and a mid-tone. So I really like this color, but I am discovering it does not go crazy dark. So if you're looking for something that will go really dark in value, this is probably not the color for you, but I'm loving the complexity of the burgundy and the green in it, and I'm enjoying the variety of midtones and highlights I can get in this color. And like I said, it has this really cool kind of rustic, almost vintage look to it. Going really dark again with this value in the shadow just under the thumb, overlapping the baby's hand. At least as dark as I can get it with this paint. On the thumbnail, there's just a slight indication of a highlight right here on the side. Just having a lot of fun getting lost in the details here. Just painting these real subtle little wrinkles. And here's another more intense shadow right here under this finger. Completely in shadow. So just go as dark as you can in your deepest, darkest shadows. And try to get them to the right value on the first pass, because the more you mess with it, the worse it'll look. So try to just do a brush stroke and be done with it. The key to painting skin is just to do a lot of blending. If you want it to look smooth and realistic, number one, get your values right. Make sure that you plan ahead for your highlights and blend your edges. I'm constantly looking back and forth between my reference photo and my painting and just checking my values, making sure I've gone as dark as I need to in the darkest areas. And the wonderful thing about doing a single color study like this is that you can really, really practice focusing on value alone. That's really the most important thing that you're looking for when you're doing this. So that'll help improve your color paintings too. It'll just make it easier to see where you need to go darker and where you need to keep it lighter. I just constantly am dipping my brush in the water and dabbing it on the paper towel. If I need to remove any excess paint, if I feel like my value is a little too dark, I can just water it down a little bit, and that helps me lighten it up. I don't even have to do it here in the palette. I can control how much paint is on my brush just by using the water jar and the paper towel. Just adding some very, very light cross hatching. Again, to add a little bit of that skin detail. I need another little bit of a mid-tone right here on the thumb. It's looking a little too flat. And smoothing out that really hard edge in the shadow. You might need to continue to water down your paint as it begins to dry. Okay, that's dry enough. I'm going to come back in and just add some little fingernail details in the shadow here. And this index finger here needs to go even darker too. And the little baby thumbnail. So sweet. With hot press paper, if you use a lot of water, it's really easy for the paint to get away from you and get out of control. So I recommend not using too much water. Use only enough to get it flowing. Even that was a little much, so I have to dab it on the paper towel to control that water in my brush. I think this image would also look really good as a pencil drawing too. But I'm enjoying this reddish color. It does have this really cool Renaissance look to it. Okay, we're almost done. We just need to wrap up a couple more little shadow shapes in the baby's fingers. A little crease between those fingers, and then blending it out into a shadow shape. Watering it down and blending more. As that shadow emerges into the light, you'll just continue watering down your brush very gradually. Then I need to add a little bit more just to go slightly darker in that shadow. Then the last little finger right here, we'll start with that little crack in the shadow and blend in a mid-tone shadow shape along the finger, watering it down as we come over to the light. Can go a little more intense in shadow areas as needed, but again, you can't get super dark with this particular pigment, so I wouldn't try to load on the paint too much, otherwise you may end up with paint that cracks over time because it's too thick. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let's just add a little bit of background shadow shapes. Let me switch back to my bigger brush. And let's see how this paint handles little blooms. Might as well use up all my paint here and go really dark along the light side of that hand. I'm just going to add some fun brushy flat wash brush texture. Kind of giving our edges a little bit of movement. Okay, there's our finished painting with the Iridescent Scarab red. I'm just going to hold it a little bit closer so you can see that. It's really shimmery. In the light, you can catch that hint of green, which is so, so beautiful. So what a fun color. If you want to try this out, tag me on Instagram. I'd love to see what you paint with this color and let me know what you think. If you've tried any of the other Daniel Smith iridescent paints, I want to know if you love them or if you hate them. I want to know your opinion because I would love to try some more of these. So thanks so much for watching.